Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Mr. Andryan and all of my friends. I am Murtiningrum. My topic today is Deficit on Indonesia Trade Balance for April 2020. So, here is the press release from Bank Indonesia on 15 May 2020. Indonesia's trade balance for April 2020 recorded deficit about 344.7 million US dollar, after a surplus in previous month about 715.7 million US dollar. First, let me explain you about what is balance of trade. The balance of trade is the value of country's export minus its import. It is the biggest component of the balance of payment that measures all international transactions. It's easy to measure since all goods and many services pass through the customs office. The trade balance is also the biggest part of the current account. It measures a country's net income earned on international assets. It's the trade balance plus any other payments across borders. A positive trade balance, called surplus, is when export exceeds imports, while a negative trade balance, called deficit, is when exports are less than imports. There is a favorable trade balance and unfavorable trade balance. First, favorable trade balance is when most countries create trade policies that encourage a trade surplus. It's like making a profit as a country. Nations prefer to sell more products and receive more capital for their residents. That translates into a higher standard of living. Their companies also gain a competitive advantage in expertise by producing all the exports. They hire more workers, reduce unemployment, and generate more income. To maintain this favorable trade balance, leaders often resort to trade protectionism. They protect domestic industries by levying tariffs, quotas, or subsidies on imports. Second, unfavorable trade balance. Trade deficits are an unfavorable balance of trade. As a rule, countries with trade deficits export raw materials. They import a lot of consumer products. Their domestic business don't gain the experience needed to make value-added products. Their economies become dependent on global commodity price. Such a strategy also depletes their natural resource in the long run. Some countries are also opposed to trade deficits that they adopt mercantilism. This is an extreme form of economic nationalism that says remove the trade deficit at all costs. It advocates protectionist measures such as tariff and import quotas. Although this measure can reduce the deficit, they also raise consumer price. Worst of all, they trigger reactionary protectionism for the nation's trade partners. It lowers international trade and economic growth for everyone involved. In general, the factor that determine the balance of trade is: first, production cost in importing country versus exporting country. One example is the cost of producing petroleum in Indonesia is more expensive than the cost of producing petroleum in Arabia. So, Indonesian industries will tend to import petroleum rather than buying local products. Second, the availability of raw materials. If a country wants to produce high-quality iron pipes, but there is no high-quality iron ore mine available in the country must import from abroad. The third is exchange rate. Countries that have high exchange rate will have low competitiveness in international trade when compared to countries with weak exchange rate. Countries with weak currency exchange rate actually have higher competitiveness because the price of their products will be cheaper for users of different currencies. The fourth, standardizations of imported goods. The application of certain standards for goods that are allowed to circulate in certain countries can be a barrier for a country to export its goods to other countries. And the last, the import or export tariff itself. The government can set high export tariffs to prevent the shipment of goods abroad if it is feared that there will be export of vital goods. The application of import duties by a country is a step that can be taken to overcome the trade balance deficit. The cause of the trade balance deficit is this development was influenced by slowing world demand, disruptions of global supply chains, and low commodity price in line with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic that spread throughout the world. Furthermore, the April 2020 trade balance deficit was influenced by the deficit in the non-oil and gas trade balance. The non-oil and gas trade balance had a deficit of $100.9 million in April 2020, down from the previous month, which is $1.67 billion surplus. This development was due to a decrease in export performance of manufactured products and mineral fuels, especially coal. The positive performance of export of gold, iron and steel, and oil and vegetable fats can withstand a deeper decline in non-oil and gas exports. Meanwhile, the oil and gas trade balance in April 2020 was a deficit on $243.8 million, lower than the deficit in previous month of $953.3 million. The decrease in the deficit was mainly influenced by the decline in oil and gas imports in line with the decline in oil and gas prices. Even the trade of balance in April is deficit. In general, during January until April or first quarter of 2020, the trade balance was still a surplus of $2.25 billion. The surplus was supported by the export performance from January to April 2020, amounting to $53.95 billion. It increased 0.44%, while imports decreased by 7.78% with a total of $51.71 billion. The largest surplus occurred in the United States with a total of $3.6 billion, then India with $2.3 billion, and the Netherlands with $757 million. While the trade balance that experienced a deficit is China was $4.48 billion, Thailand $1.2 billion, and Australia $754 million. Next, how about the foreign exchange reserves? Indonesia's foreign exchange reserves at the end of April 2020 was $127.9 billion, an increase compared to the position at the end of March 2020, which was $121 billion. The position of the foreign exchange reserves is equivalent to 7.8 months of imports or 7.5 months of imports and payment of government foreign debt, and is above the international adequacy standard of about 3 months of import, said Executive Director Communication of Bank Indonesia, Oni Wijanarko. Last but not least, Bank Indonesia will keep a close watch on the dynamics of the spread of COVID-19 and its impact on the Indonesian economy, including the trade balance, and continue to strengthen policy synergies with the government and relevant authorities to increase external resilience. Okay, I think that's all of my presentations today. Thank you for your attention.